B.E.A.S.T. Skylar Sky High. Summary. Blue Leo, what did you do? Leonardo whispered in horror. His hand slightly raised, unsure whether to cover his mouth or his eyes. Blue tilted his head with an innocent smile and glanced to the side, to the massacre he had created. The brutality of it. There is no mistaking what happened here. Blue said lightly, lifting his hand to wipe some pink blood from his cheek. His voice is deceptively casual as he spoke, as if he's making a normal conversation. As if he isn't holding a bloodied sword and standing in a room of a massacre. Well, you see, when you mentioned the crane was behind this, I was pretty sure you needed help with an apocalypse. Which is, like, really strange. If I had a nickel for every time I needed to save a timeline from an apocalypse, I'd have 2 nickels. AKA, the other turtles find out how scary the 18 turtles are. Notes. Surprise. A short little fic to fill my desire to see others be horrified by the sheer brutality and strength of the Rise Turtles. Also, the title is from the song B.E.A.S.T by Once Monsters. I feel like it fits with this story. 3. I had fun playing around with this lol. This is inspired by a Tumblr post art by Pillodraws. Go check them out, they're cool. See the end of the work for more notes. Chapter 1, all according to Keikaku. Leonardo cursed internally as he ran down the hallway of the Krong ship. His alternates are right behind them, their faces wrung with worry. The hallways are cold monochrome, with silver and pink all over as the trademark colors for the pink aliens that have been a thorn in their side since they first stepped into the surface. Their alternates coming into their world was just another wrinkle in their long list of what the fuck moments. Their appearance was partly accidental and partly purposeful. The Krong had been messing with portal technology, reaching out to the multiverse, and it malfunctioned. Mostly because the turtles intervened, because why wouldn't they? The Krong and portals are not a good combination. It spat out 3 other versions of the turtles. All of them looked slightly different, but had similarities, mainly their colors and names. They saved the turtles and booked tails out of the ship before the Krong could capture any of them. According to Donatello, those 3 are from universes 0387 and 18. They looked very different, with different builds, but all of them were similar looking with only their masks to tell them apart. Only the 18 turtles looked vastly different because they were apparently different species. They were an interesting bunch. Nicknames had to be given out, but even then, they still got confused. Michelangelo had the idea to put stickers on them with nicknames. He got stickers for planets and stars, which is how the 87 bunch got the planet nicknames: Neptune, Venus, Saturn, and Mars for Leo, Raph, Donnie, and Mikey respectively. And the 03 got constellations: Leo, Taurus, Gemini, Virgo in the same order, though the team has taken to call them even shorter nicknames. The 18 went with colors since Dad calls us by colors anyway, according to Blue. So far they have been interesting. The 87 and 18 bunch were thick as thieves, practically best friends the moment they opened their mouths. Not that Leonardo didn't expect anything else. They had the same silly vibe to them. Their experience and skill in fighting were pretty close as well, but it was mostly their carefree, happy-go-lucky attitudes that made them similar. It's like those 2 groups never take anything seriously. They even say weird things almost every few minutes, like turtle power and hot soup. It was grating to hear constantly. The 03 turtles are great, a bit more serious, except for Virgo, but that's the same for pretty much every Michelangelo. They seem older, and they weren't fazed about the dimension travel thing. They mentioned that they had done some time travel adventure, which they found a kinship with. The 03 turtles were more experienced in fighting, and they acted a bit more similarly to them. Getting them home had been the priority, but the Donatellas have tried that. They just didn't have the power nor the coordinates of the universes to send them back. They concluded that they couldn't do it without the portal generator that the Krong used to send them here in the first place, which meant going back to their ship, which is not going to happen. It's too dangerous, especially with the Triceratons after them. The 87 is a bit distressed by it, understandably so, since they didn't want to be here in the first place. The 03 is split between understanding and frustration. They didn't want to be here too, but they kept their mouths shut since they know it is risky to get into the mothership of the alien species. Only the 18 seem to be taking it in a stride, though that may be because they are physically younger than all of them, teenagers for fuck's sake, and they're in awe at the idea of traveling in space. They wouldn't stop looking out the windows and blabbering about Jupiter Gym, which is a show they watch back home. Leonardo asked if it was like Space Heroes, and the teens went off. Leonardo and Blue spent some time gushing over their respective shows. It was the few times they got along. The Slider is a bit too much for Leonardo, and he barely got along with Neptune. Blue was a jokester, and he spewed pun after pun the moment they landed. It would be endearing if he wasn't making a point to be as annoying as Mikey. But it's fine. That just means more turtles to help them find the black hole generator, which they are happy to help out after they learned the fate of their Earth. The 03 were sympathetic to them, as were the 87s, but the 18 were suspiciously quiet. They hardly spoke about their Krong, only that they were really strong and hurt them. They didn't question anymore. They were still teenagers after all. Even if they did somehow have weird mystic powers. The 3s do too, but don't use them as casually because it takes more energy. Leonardo didn't think for a second that with the additional turtles, that things would go well. Not once. Because this is their life, and when has it ever been easy? Turns out, the Krong had a reason to open a dimensional portal like that. What they assumed was a mishap was actually them interrupting the Krong's progress of kidnapping a version of them to mind control them to fight them. They were ambushed, stunned from the sudden attack, and the Krong swooped in. They fought them back, but they were quickly overwhelmed by the unending army of Krong droids. Worse, the 18 turtles seemed to freeze at the sight of them and lose their mystic weapon, rendering them helpless to the Krong's forces. Now they have 18 turtles, and they have to save them. They're just kids, not to mention their mystic powers. If the Krong manages to mind control them, then it would be a disaster. They snuck onto the Krong ship and split up. That's how Leonardo is running around the Krong ship with his alternates trying to find Blue in these massive, maze-like hallways. The ship rumbled, shaking violently, and nearly knocking the Leos off their feet. Ag. Leo grimaced as he held his hand against the wall. Are we in an asteroid field or something? Not that I can see. Neptune glanced out the window at the empty sea of black with specks of distant stars. We have to keep moving, Leonardo reminded, stepping forward to keep going despite the tremors. Who knows what the Krong have done to them? They agreed and quickened their pace. The hall seemed to be empty, and despite being inside a Krong ship, they haven't encountered a single Krong droid. It made them wary, and they have a bad feeling about it all. Could it be another trap? Were the Krong planning to capture all of them? Leonardo stops when he hears something up ahead. It sounded like the clashing of metal against metal, of a sword cutting through Krong droids. There's also the horror of plasma blasts being shot and hitting something. But there's also a sickening sound of what squelches and splatters. Alarm shot through them and they ran, pulling out their blades ready for a fight. They were expecting a lot of things. Maybe the Krong are hurting Blue, or Blue escaped somehow, and he's fighting for his life. The worst scenario is finding Blue barely alive yet still stubbornly fighting like a Leonardo. When they turned the corner into the room, they saw a closed door. Leo slammed his hand to the control panel, and the door opened with a hiss, and they froze. The air felt like it had been sucked out from around them. It felt chilling and cold, like the empty vastness of space around them. Yet there is a buzz in the air accompanied by a dangerous aura that speaks of a deadly predator. A brush of it made their skin prickle with goosebumps, and their heart beat loudly inside their chest. Each breath felt like breathing in ice and electricity, feeling almost like it was burning their throat. They didn't dare make a sound, latent turtle instinct screaming at them to stay still or hide in their shell. The room is dark, much darker than the constantly lit monochrome ship around them. The lights had been smashed, leaving the room blanketed in darkness except for the light from the hallway spilling from the open door. Blue is standing in the middle of the room, his shell to them with his Adachi held out beside him, breathing heavily, his markings glowing brightly. The splatters of pink against his body and on the pristine blade made their blood freeze. Blue tensed, spinning around to face them. For a moment, his expression looked completely feral. His eyes were slitted, glowing with mystic energy, and bright with anger. His lips were pulled back in a snarl, baring his sharp teeth like a predator. He hissed a sound that sent a chill through their bones. It didn't sound natural. It was a mix of a snake's hiss, with an underlying growl akin to a tiger, and some sort of weird clicking that didn't fit any animal they know of. It was an amalgamation of noises that just sounded wrong. The sound nearly made Leonardo retreat into his shell out of terror. From the flinch from his alternates, they were feeling the same way. Metal clattered on the floor, and it snapped Leonardo out of his daze to notice that he and the others had dropped their weapons on the ground. He mentally scolded himself for losing his weapon, something he should never do, but he couldn't move his body. He couldn't bend down to pick up his weapons, not under the scrutiny of a predator searching for prey. Blue's eyes flicked down to the katanas on the floor for a brief moment. Then the crushing aura faded away, and they could finally breathe. Like a switch had been flipped. The glow died down, and Blue gave them a bright smile. It gave them whiplash with how fast Blue turned from a deadly predator into an innocent and bright-looking turtle. But that image is shattered when he lifts his bloodied Adachi with a wave and a bright chirp of "Hey guys." For a moment, Leonardo couldn't speak. He couldn't push the words out of his throat. His eyes flicked over to the floor, wall, and even the ceiling of the room. All of it had splatters of pink like someone had waved a paintbrush around in the room. On the floor are broken pieces of monochrome, Krong droids, destroyed into irreparable pieces. Then his eyes locked onto the bits of cut-up pink flesh thrown around the room. The sight made their stomach churn. Blue Leo, what did you do? Leonardo whispered in horror. His hand slightly raised, unsure whether to cover his mouth or his eyes. Blue tilted his head with an innocent smile and glanced to the side, to the massacre he had created. The brutality of it. There is no mistaking what happened here. Blue said lightly, lifting his hand to wipe some pink blood from his cheek. His voice is deceptively casual as he spoke as if he's making a normal conversation. As if he isn't holding a bloodied sword and standing in a room of a massacre. Well, you see, when you mentioned the Krang was behind this, I was pretty sure you needed help with an apocalypse. Which is, like, really strange. If I had a nickel for every time I needed to save a timeline from an apocalypse, I'd have 2 nickels. What? What is he saying? Apocalypse? They never mentioned this. Is this why they had such a strange reaction to any mention of the Krang? Was it not child innocence being shattered? Is that why they all looked at them so strangely? But then your Krang are like babies. Itty-bitty babies who are not terrifying. Bloodthirsty, overpowered by our weapons. I was like, man, they had it easy. We were so sure we'd be home in time for dinner. What? Leonardo feels his alternates begin to shake. They don't like the look in Blue's eyes, hidden behind a faux mask of cheerful casualness. He walks around, waving his adachi, like it's a staff, using a pointed end to poke at a bit of Krang. I thought you could handle them yourself. Like, you got a lot on your plate. Saving the entire world is hard after all, and you seem pretty capable. Really, we were tired of dealing with Krang. But then you kept telling us stuff about them. Things that really triggered us. They are an annoyance, yeah, but also pretty dangerous. Blue uses the tip of his blade to pick up a bisected piece of Krang, its face, twisted in horror in its final moments. He lifted it up to his face with a contemplative look. Pink blood trails down his blade and they all stared at its path with a cold feeling. Like, mind control. A full-scale invasion. Turning every human into mutant slaves. Yeah, pretty bad, not gonna lie, he said casually. He snaps his head to his alternates. Leo takes a step back while Neptune jumps. Leonardo went stock still. Everything they thought about Blue, any resemblance to a picture of innocence that he had, was shattered. He isn't innocent. Right now, despite the lack of a mystic aura, Blue feels like a coiled viper. A predator ready to strike at any given moment. There's no taking back whatever assumptions they had about this teenager. Blue is anything but innocent. He's dangerous. Blue seems to know this, and he grins, full of bloodthirsty malice and teeth. Really, we did try to let you handle it yourselves. Blue threw the piece away with a casual flick of his sword. They flinched at the wet splatter as it landed somewhere. Honest, we didn't want to fight another Krang invasion. Once was enough. So Leo cleared his throat. So what changed your mind? Why do this? Blue grinned. Simple. We realized how easy it was to handle them. Like, we have mystic powers and all. Plus, these Krang use tech, which Donnie can handle easily. Like, he can find out their language, which your Donnie has cracked the code for. Thank you for that, so he can just hack all of their systems and turn it against them. Is that why Purple wanted to see the Krang's code? Leonardo thought Donnie was joking when he mentioned that Purple wanted to use it to hack their systems. And that's if we want to be subtle. I'm sure Raph and Mikey can just smash through their mothership. Break in, beat up a few ships a la Mad Dog style, and bada bing bada boom. No more Krang. Leonardo swallowed dryly. He had no doubt that Blue truly believed that. How powerful are they? Is he telling the truth? You're joking, Neptune stammered. You have to be. There's no way you can do that. That's where you're wrong, Miss Hermano. Blue's eyes flashed with a smirk. You underestimated us, which, I don't blame you. I told him to keep it a secret. See, our Krang was much worse than yours. Then again, ours were ridiculously overpowered, and had the ability to spread their flesh like a parasite and turn people and things into Krang zombies. We had to lock ours away into a prison dimension. Nearly died with that stunt. That's after some time travel shenanigans from an apocalyptic timeline, to get my future student to warn us about the key. Leonardo's mind is hurting from the overload of information. So what? Leo asked. You're going to kill them all? His eyes glanced down at the bits of Krang, and then back at Blue. Why? As I said, we're getting tired of the Krang. We can't stop them, so we will. This isn't right. Blue shrugs. Do you want to stop the Triceratons from getting the piece or not? A chill swept through them. It isn't the words that made them freeze. It was the building aura coming from the young slider. It was powerful, pressurized, electrified, and more. It felt like facing the shredder somehow. The steely look in his eyes laid out his intentions for the aliens. This is as much a help as it is vengeance. He wanted to take his rage out on the Krong, any version of them. Don't you want to go home? Blue smiles, as sharp as the blade he wields. Yes, but, Leonardo stammered, glancing between Blue and the carnage around them. Blue steps forward, and they all freeze in place. They don't move, out of fear or out of something else, they aren't sure. Leonardo can't get his body to move. He jolted when Blue laid a hand on his shoulder and gave him a smile. Leonardo met his eyes with his own wide ones. Under normal circumstances, that smile would have looked reassuring, but the blood on Blue's cheek only made it chilling. You focus on the Triceratons. Blue leans closer to his head. Let us handle the Krong. I'll even grab the portal generator on our way out. He pulled away and gave Leonardo's shoulder a gentle pat. Blue smiles brightly. Trust us, we got this. Leonardo watches, frozen in place as Blue saunters past him to walk down the hall. He feels a shiver going through his body, and his knees fail him, sending him crashing onto the floor. Leonardo Neptune was quick to move by his side, his worry overseeing his fear of the young turtle. Leonardo doesn't respond, pulling his hands to his plastron to feel the harsh thudding of his heart. His body feels cold. That look on Blue's face, it was exactly like the Shredder's. That look of cold rage, of burning hatred, the unending desire for vengeance. He would do anything to get it. He isn't sure if he could pull Blue out of it. Leo unfroze when the slider passes him. He turns to follow Blue and chases after him. Hey, wait! Blue stops and turns his head to look over his shoulder. Leo stops. You can't do this, was what he wanted to say. You can't go off on your own. You can't murder an entire race of aliens. But that look on Blue's face stopped the words on his tongue. That's a look he's familiar with. A look of someone, a leader, on a mission. It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's not even fueled with rage. It's a cold calculation and determination. You can't do it alone, he said weakly. Blue huffed, his lips quirking up into a small grin. I'm not. My brothers are doing their part. Leo mulled over the words carefully, then a slow realization came to him. The lack of any details about their Krong. Purple asking about the code from Donatello. Losing their weapons mid-battle during an ambush. The calculation, the casual disregard for his actions. Blue's words. You planned this. Blue shrugs, holding up one arm, his hand covered in blood. Caught pink-handed. Where are they? Leo asked. The slider doesn't ask him who he was talking about. Donnie's taking over their systems as we speak. Blue informed with a grin, hands folded behind his back like some kind of showman villain. Mikey and Raph are probably handling the rest of the Krong and their weapons. I don't think I've ever seen them so enthusiastic about murder before. But you know what trauma does, right? Leo swallowed dryly. Are you going to leave us? You'll be perfectly safe, Blue assured. My brothers won't let anything happen to yours. That's a mad dog's promise. I can portal all of you back to the ship and you'll be on your merry way. We'll be back before you know it. And what about you? What about your brothers? Will you be okay? Blue chuckles. He walked closer to Leo, and the turtle fought the urge to move away as the slider leaned up to face him. Let me fill you in on a little secret, Blue whispered with a wink. We are much stronger than you think. Leo doesn't doubt it. He feels like he's being stared down by a viper. We're not leaving you alone, Leo said, putting as much authority and firmness into his tone. I'm sure you're capable of handling yourselves. But we are not leaving you or your brothers behind. Blue pulls away slightly, and gives him an odd look before he laughs. He reached up and patted Leo's arm. All right then, big guy. He pulls away, and lifts his forearm in front of his mouth. You're the leader. Yo guys, Blue spoke into the communicator, his eyes glinting with amusement as the other two caught up to them. Little change of plans. Our alternates want to see the show. Purple's voice came first, really. Splendid. We can let them use one of the ships to give them front row seats. Oh, and I am in their systems. Ah yeah. Time to show them some real razzmatazz. Orange chirped in excitement. Are you sure about this, Leo? What if they get hurt? Red voiced worriedly over the comm. Blue grinned at the affronted look on his alternates' faces. His eyes flashed blue. I'm sure they'll be fine.